World War II was the largest armed conflict in history. It spanned 3 continents and claimed tens of millions of lives. Poland was its first victim, suffering proportionally the greatest population loss. Nearly 6 million Polish citizens died, the majority of whom were civilians. Almost half of them were Polish Jews. Located in the heart of Central Europe and home to nearly 1/3 of Europe's Jewish population, Poland was chosen by the Germans as the site for the final solution.
Already in 18th century, Poland had the largest Jewish population all over the world. It did not change until the outbreak of the Second World War.
Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Trapped in the ghettos, cut off from the outside world, the Jews had no chance of escape or survival without the help of the Poles. Helping the Jews was punishable by death, yet thousands made that decision to provide such help. This monument in the city of Łódź, where the second largest ghetto was located, commemorates the 7,000 people who managed to help and receive the title as righteous among the nations. Each tree in this park was personally planted by a survivor.
Helping persecuted Jews carried the death penalty for both the helper and their family.
If a Pole was captured who had saved a Jew, they met the same fate as the Jew did. A Gentile Pole, it did not happen to a Gentile French or Belgium or Holland. They would send them to concentration camps, but the punishment was not as great as the Pole had received.
Despite this, Poles make up the largest group honored with the title Righteous Among the Nations, awarded by Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center. Many of them were clergy members or acted out of Christian convictions. Father Marceli Godlewski, Sister Matylda Getter, and the Ulma family. These figures symbolize the different ways Polish society helped the Jews. Their actions were part of a broader movement that occurred in occupied Poland, proving that even in the most inhumane conditions, one can remain human, standing up to evil with courage and compassion, often at the cost of one's own life. Saving a man, the role of the Church during the Holocaust. The road to Holocaust.
In September 1939, more than 500 Polish cities and villages were burned, and more than 16,000 civilians were murdered.
The primary goal of German policy in occupied Poland was the complete subjugation of Poles to the interests of the Third Reich. To achieve this, the occupiers began exterminating the intellectual and leadership elite in the first weeks of the war. Tens of thousands of teachers, priests, landowners, professionals, social and political activists, and retired military officers were murdered.
Not soldiers, no members of underground of resistance, but civilians, both in cities, towns, and villages.
Thousands more were sent to concentration camps.
What differed the German occupation in Poland and in France, for example, or Denmark, was the scale of brutality.
The Germans behaved differently. In Poland, they were not among humans, but among barbarians. Their contempt for Poles was just a little bit less than for Jews. I mean, Jews were non-human, Poles were subhuman. And so they could behave without any kind of restraint towards the Jews and towards the Poles. In Denmark, a Danish citizen, annoyed with how the Germans behaved, spit into the face of an assessment and got a 30-day suspended sentence. In Poland, you get a bullet between your eyes on the spot.
Nazism was really a diabolical system, trying to finish with faith, with religion, and annihilate everything what was not Hitlerian, a totalitarian system, and then anti-Christian, anti-religious system. And no doubt that the Jewish people suffered really many losses, but it was also so because for Hitler, Judaism was a religion. And then after finishing Judaism, they would like to finish Christianity.
The Roman Catholic Church, from the very beginning of the war, was the aim of vehement persecutions. So 16% of all priests, nuns and monks were persecuted in a different way. About 3,000 of them were murdered by the German aggressors. Many thousands were sent to concentration camps. People who were natural leaders of local population were not able to show the way for the people. A speech of a local priest during the sermon that stressed, you must help your neighbors. And from this moment, the approach of many people changed a lot.
From the fall of 1939, Jews were stigmatized by the requirement to wear armbands with the Star of David. Their freedom of movement was gradually restricted. The next step was the establishment of ghettos, areas where Jews were forced to live, isolated from the rest of the population.
In 1940, the Germans crowded all the Jews from Warsaw and its surroundings into one district and surrounded it with a wall, creating a large prison, a ghetto. There were 600 such ghettos in Poland. This was the prelude to the Holocaust.
I know that Hitler said, put the Jews in some enclaves and let them die there. This was his statement.
After the attack on the Soviet Union, the Germans began the physical liquidation of the Jews. In the territories of pre-war Poland, the Germans built 6 extermination camps where they murdered Polish Jews and hundreds of thousands of Jews from across Europe. The camps were located in sparsely populated areas near major railway junctions. The Polish underground state took a clear and decisive stand against the Holocaust. It not only took the responsibility of informing the world, but also made efforts to provide effective assistance to Jews and to punish all forms of collaboration with the Germans.
Jan Karski, a representative of the Polish underground state, managed to reach the Allies to inform the world about the Holocaust. He not only delivered the news to the British government, but also reached the US President Franklin Delano Roosevelt himself, to no avail.
Mr. President, the situation is horrible. Without the outside help, the Jews will perish in Poland. So now his answer. The Allied nations are going to win this war. No more wars. Justice will be done. your country will be alive again, more prosperous than before. Criminals will be punished. Do you know what question he asked me? Do I understand correctly, young men, that before the war, Poland was essentially an agricultural country? I had no chance, except my initial statement, to tell you, Mr. President, listen to me. Well, you don't speak to the President of the United States. No Jewish problem was mentioned until the end of the conversation, which lasted 1 hour 20 minutes.
In the general government, the extermination of Jews began in early 1942, and especially after July, when the liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto began. In August, a prominent Polish writer, Zofia Kossak-Szczucka, published a protest under a significant title, Protest. Dying Jews are surrounded by countless Pontius Pilates washing their hands of the matter. We do not want to be Pontius Pilates. We cannot actively oppose German murders. We can do nothing to help or save anyone, but we protest from the depths of our hearts filled with compassion, indignation, and terror. This protest is demanded of us by God, who forbade murder. It is demanded by Christian conscience. Anyone who does not support this protest with us is not a Catholic. Among those who helped were people who had previously harbored resentment toward Jews.
I had a friend, Professor Schwinchitsky, who would often say after the war, "I don't like Jews." I'd ask him, why? He'd just reply, "Well, I don't like them, that's all." Later, I found out that he and his family had hidden Jews, some for a long time. He had 2 small children. He didn't like Jews, but he hid them because he believed it was his Christian duty.
Father Marceli Godlewski, a righteous priest.
Warsaw was the largest center of Jewish population in Europe, second only to New York. A vibrant, living, and fascinating community. The Grzybowski Square in Warsaw lay at the boundary of the 2 worlds, Jewish and Christian. When the ghetto was formed, the All Saints Church, located behind me, found itself within it. This is where Father Godlewski worked. He was over 75 years old at the time, but did not leave his church. He stayed and helped. Thanks to him, many Jews, including multiple children, managed to escape from the ghetto.
O księdzu Marcelim Godlewskim można powiedzieć w jednym słowie, że był społeczny.
Father Marceli Godlewski can be described in one word, a social activist. However, that word carries a lot of meaning. He was part of the generation of priests who, following Pope Leo XIII's encyclical, became involved in working with laborers. He held a doctorate after studying in Rome and was a biblical scholar. Upon returning to Poland, he began working with laborers, founding the Christian Workers Association, and became the driving force behind Christian labor movements.
I zostaje proboszczem parafii.
He eventually became the parish priest of All Saints Church in Warsaw, one of the largest parishes in the city, located in both a working-class district and a Jewish district. Jews made up the majority of the residents. This is where World War II found him.
Ponieważ już przed wojną
Even before the war, this part of Warsaw was predominantly Jewish.
była w większości żydowska.
Over 70% of the local population were Jews.
Okolicy to byli Żydzi. W związku z tym
As a result, when the Germans were marking the boundaries of the ghetto,
uwzględnili przede wszystkim te obszary, gdzie
they prioritized areas with the highest Jewish populations.
getta znalazły
3 churches ended up inside the ghetto, one of which was All Saints Church,
świętych, czyli jest w całości
completely surrounded by the ghetto wall.
murem. Do getta sprowadzają się Żydzi z różnych
Jews from various parts of Warsaw were being relocated to the ghetto. However, these were Jews according to the German definition, based on the Nuremberg laws. Even those who had been Christians for 1 or 2 generations and considered themselves Polish were classified as Jews. Father Godlewski made an effort to provide pastoral care to these individuals, Christians who found themselves in the ghetto because they were considered Jews.
Na plebanii było miejsce dla około 100 osób.
In the parish house, there was room for about 100 people. Over time, these individuals brought their families, and others came as well. When you examine the group of people who stayed at the parish under Father Godlewski's care, it turns out that 2/3 of them were Christians. However, post-war accounts indicate that at least 1/3 of these people were not baptized, so they couldn't be classified as Catholics or Christians. Among them were the family of Ludwig Zamenhof, the creator of Esperanto, and Ludwig Hirschfeld, a professor who was nominated for the Nobel Prize.
When I recall his name, I'm overcome with emotion, passion and love in a single soul. Once a fierce anti-Semite, a priest who fought with pen and word, but when fate brought him face to face with the depths of misery, he cast aside his prejudice and devoted the full fervor of his priestly heart to the Jews. This is how the survivor Professor Ludwig Hirschfeld remembered him.
Over time, Father Godlewski recognized the other needs of Jews living in the ghetto, such as the smuggling of children.
They spoke wonders about Father Godlewski. Many of the children who ended up in convents passed through his hands.
This is the home of Father Godlewski. After the outbreak of the war, he handed it over to the Franciscan Sisters of the Family of Mary for the orphanage. He himself occupied only one small room on the first floor. It was in this house where around 20 Jewish boys were hidden with the sisters' help.
That was the second group of people who received help from Father Godlewski. The third group consisted of those who received false birth certificates. Priests were informed like this, issuing a real birth certificate for someone in hiding, whether it's an officer who escaped from captivity or someone else who escaped from a Gestapo prison, was not their concern. They knew. Many priests helped us with this. Father Zia, for instance, was a great help, as was Father Stefan Sidri, a Marian priest. He helped a lot. There were also Palatine priests who were very helpful. There were individual parish priests, and I'm talking about Warsaw. But there were also priests outside of Warsaw. This practice lasted for a long time. Some priests ended up in prison for it. Father Krosczycki, for example, was sent to Majdanek for issuing those false birth certificates. Some were killed.
Znam też taką historię osoby, która zresztą potem była referentem sprawy księdza.
I know of a story about someone who later became involved in Father Godlewski's case at Yad Vashem. This person was hiding on the Aryan side in Praga. And the person hiding him went to All Saints Church, hoping that it would be easy to obtain a birth certificate there. It was somewhat of common knowledge in certain circles in Warsaw that Father Godlewski could issue false birth certificates without asking too many questions.
During Father Godlewski's passionate sermons, the church was packed with people. Around 100 individuals stayed permanently on the rectory grounds. Hundreds more received fake documents that enabled them to escape the ghetto. Due to the underground nature of these activities, many details and exact numbers are unknown. Father Zdzisław Król, who was the parish priest of All Saints Church for many years, spoke of hiding places from the war discovered in the church basement, where Jews likely sought refuge. After the war, Jews appreciated Father Godlewski's effort and contributed funds to rebuild the church.
This church was the first site in Poland to be honored as House of Life, a place where Jews found help and salvation.
Takich miejsc jest na świecie około 400.
There are around 400 such places in the world, and one of them is All Saints Church. It is also the only place in Poland to receive the title House of Life. It's similar to the Righteous Among the Nations award, but for a location.
Father Marceli Godlewski was one of at least 800 priests who helped the Jews. At least several dozen of those priests paid with their lives. Because the help was so deeply clandestine, many cases may never come to light. Sister Matylda Getter, simply righteous.
This place played an extraordinary role in saving Jewish children. Since 1862, it housed an orphanage founded by the Franciscan Sisters of the Family of Mary. After the ghetto was established, its boundaries literally ran through here. The residents of the ghetto quickly realized that the sisters did not refuse help to anyone. Children were brought here, smuggled, or even abandoned. The sisters accepted every child.
Matylda Getter was 17 when she felt the calling to join a convent. Surprisingly, her confessor advised her to join the congregation of the Sisters of the Family of Mary. It was at their school in Warsaw, on Żelazna Street, that she completed her education. She didn't know that her teachers and mentors were nuns from a hidden congregation. This was during the time when Poland was under the partition of Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Warsaw and the eastern part of Poland were under Russian rule. Mother Getter dedicated herself to establishing orphanages, first for the children who were victims of World War I, and later, during the interwar period, for all children in need. For this work, she was awarded the Order of Polonia Restituta and the Gold Cross of Merit. As provincial superior, she directly oversaw 44 houses, 22 orphanages, and 412 sisters. When the war broke out and Nazi Germany invaded Poland, she and her fellow sisters organized aid for military units, set up medical centers for the wounded, and organized soup kitchens for the poor. She also opened her heart to Jewish children.
This is yet another location on the map of Warsaw where Jewish children were hidden and prepared for transfer outside the city limits. Notably, today, there's a window of life here where mothers can anonymously leave their newborn, and the sisters will take care of it.
Her main office as provincial superior during the war was a small old wooden house on 53 Hoja Street. This also became the central hub for rescuing Jewish children. Mother Getter said she was saving a man. And indeed, she was saving lives, but she never imposed this work on the other sisters. She turned to Sister Ludwika Pensko, saying, "I cannot order anyone to do this work, where death is a constant threat." But if Jews come to us seeking help, we cannot refuse. It means God has sent them to us, and we must help. I have an account from Sister Lily Goldschmidt, who had no means of survival and came to Hoja Street, telling them she was Jewish, an outlaw, with no idea what to do with her life. Mother Getter told her, "My child, anyone who comes to our yard asking for help in the name of Christ, we cannot refuse." It was constant work, moving from one place to another. Whenever a child was in danger, the sisters would transport them. Sister Kruszewska once said, "Mother, I am so scared." She had to transport a child, but there were heavy inspections at the train station. Mother Getter looked at her and said, "Look at how beautiful this child's eyes are." She eased the tension, and Sister Kruszewska went ahead with the child and completed the journey.
W różny sposób dzieci trafiały do sióstr.
The children arrived at the sisters' homes and orphanages in various ways, sometimes in trash bins or sacks. Mother Getter had 44 houses, but she also worked with other homes, sending children from Warsaw to Lviv, and from Lviv back to Warsaw. In total, more than 60 convents were involved.
The sisters created an entire network of orphanages and private homes around Warsaw where they hid Jewish children. The Germans would frequently check up on them. When warned, the sisters would transfer children from one orphanage to another or place them with friendly neighbors. When they couldn't do so in time, the children were hidden in basements, closets, under beds, or, for example, bandaged, as if they were ill.
Ja wyliczyłam 150 sióstr.
I calculated that around 150 sisters personally transported children, but their work was supported by entire teams of sisters. Some cooked, some taught, others cleaned, washed, and mended clothes. Others worked on securing documents.
Żadna siostra nie zginęła za ratowanie Żydów.
Not a single sister died for rescuing Jews, but they lived day and night on the brink of death, saving Jewish children. The sisters saw this as an act of divine providence.
Globalnie mówimy 750.
Globally, we say that around 750 to 800 children were saved by the congregation of the Sisters of the Family of Mary. However, when we consider the entire scope of our congregation and continue counting the Jewish children saved during the war, that number grows as more of these survivors come forward.
Te słowa matki Getter, Ratuję człowieka.
Mother Getter's words, saving a man, are very close to the Babylonian proverb. Whoever saves one life saves the entire world. She was saving lives.
In September 1942, a committee was formed, later named the Council for Aid to Jews, known as Zagłady. It included representatives of both the Polish and Jewish communities. It was the only such organization in the world with the mission to save Jews and Poles of Jewish origin.
Rada Pomocy Żydom ukonstytuowała się w grudniu 1942.
The Council to Aid Jews was founded in December 1942, based on pre-existing aid networks. For instance, Irina Sendler was helping people even before the council was established. She worked through channels connected with the Polish Socialist Party and Julian Grobelny, as she mentioned in her own accounts. Grobelny became the chairman of the council, bringing with him the people he had already been collaborating with. The council was a small organization, but our liaisons had their own secret networks on the ground. Without these networks, we couldn't reach the people in need. For example, we had a liaison who delivered money every month to a group called Felicia. We didn't know where the Felicia group was. I didn't even know whether Felicia was a man or a woman. We knew someone was leading a group of teachers, but we didn't know who those teachers were. Everything was based on absolute trust among the conspirators. We knew what awaited us. People said they'd skin us alive if we were caught. We knew there was no escape. If our group fell into the hands of the Gestapo, martyrdom and death awaited us.
In addition to material aid and finding places to hide, Żagota helped organize about 50,000 documents certifying Christian identity. This was possible only with the involvement of the Polish Catholic Church. Parishes issued baptismal certificates with false names, often for deceased individuals.
Poszedłem do, jak to się nazywa ta miejscowość, do Szecka.
I went to, what's the name of that place? Ojek. To the Roman Catholic Church, to the priest. I asked him, and the priest gave me a birth certificate under the name Felix Żołądek, and also a military draft card. I had an identity card made for me. Roman Strudlinski from Magnusev helped me with that. With this ID, I pretended to be Polish, going by the name Felix Żołądek.
Taka metryka w pewnym sensie ratowała.
A birth certificate, in some sense, saved lives, but it didn't guarantee complete safety. If the Germans discovered the child was Jewish, both the priest who issued the certificate and the Jewish child would face death, and the sisters were also in danger. They brushed up against death every day and every night.
Jews found refuge in monasteries and convents, and hundreds of Jewish children were placed in orphanages run by nuns.
Znam taki przypadek, że dwie Żydówki z gminy Czernice.
I know of a case where two Jewish women from the Czernice community were hiding in the Capuchin Sisters convent. The parish priest in Prasnys, Father Piekut, took care of these girls and sent them to that convent.
Się zaopiekował tymi dziewczynkami i nocą skierował ich do tego klasztoru. Kiedy
When the convent was closed and the nuns were expelled,
to te Żydówki,
the girls somehow managed to escape.
jakimś udało im się stamtąd wydostać. I znowu
They went back to the priest for help,
w prośbę. I ksiądz ich skierował
and he sent them to a shelter run by the Sisters of Charity. It was a shelter for poor children,
To był przytułek dla dzieci biednych,
for kids who didn't have parents.
dzieci, które nie miały rodziców.
The response of Polish society to the Holocaust varied. However, despite the threat of death, many Poles would help the Jews. Traditional Polish religiosity and the spiritual leadership of local clergy played a significant role.
What was the importance, significance of an approach of a local priest, where the local priest gave signal to the members of the community that they should support? It was easier for the Jews to survive. We know that such a support given by hundreds of persons from the Roman Catholic Church was given, and dozens paid for this support with their lives.
The scale of individual assistance far exceeded that provided by the institutions of the Polish underground state. It is estimated that thanks to these individual efforts, tens of thousands of Polish Jews survived. The Ulma family, the price of righteousness.
The Ulmas were residents of a village of Markowa. Józef, like other men in Markowa, was a farmer. He grew fruits and vegetables. He introduced many novelties to his farm. For instance, he started breeding silkworms, which at that time was quite a new thing. Victoria was his wife. She was a housewife. She took care of her 6 children and she helped her husband on the farm. Józef's biggest passion was photography. He assembled 2 cameras by himself. He took many photos. Thanks to him, we know how his family looked like, the life of ordinary people in Markowa.
In and around Markowa, as in many other towns and villages in Poland, the Germans hunted Jews, usually executing those caught on the spot. The Ulma family was aware of the risks they were taking.
The Ulmas were hiding 8 Jews of Goldman family. What happened to them on the 24th of March 1944, a group of gendarmes from the police station from Łańcut, together with 6 or 7 so-called blue policemen, surrounded the house of Józef Ulma, entered the house by force and went immediately upstairs, where they killed 3 Jews. The rest of them, they forced rest of them outside where they were killed. Then, Victoria and Józef. One should be remembered that Victoria was pregnant, and it did not stop the perpetrators from killing her. And then there was sort of hesitation what to do with the children. Let's keep in mind that children witnessed the situation. Elliot Deacon, who was a commander-in-chief of a police station in Łańcut, he was that one who decided to kill the children. Later on, he was asked, "Why did you kill the children?" And he answered with the irony, to spare the commune of Markowa the trouble. So for him, the kids were the trouble, but he was also a father. One of blue policemen was Włodzimierz Leś. And he suspected that probably he told the Germans that the Ulmas were concealing Jews. He was accused of telling the Germans by a Polish underground army, in Polish language that's AK. The sentence was the death penalty. And as a result of this, he was killed. Lieutenant Elliot Deacon escaped from the Soviet front, settled down in Western Germany, and worked at a police station, respected by the residents of Essen. Died in 1960s of natural cause. Victoria and Józef knew the risk for helping Jews, so I'm sure they were aware of the punishment. The only one thing that they estimated was that they believed that their children would be saved. They both were very devoted Christians. They went to church on a regular basis. So we can assume that the act of helping Jews stemmed from Christian motives. In the private library of Józef Ulma, there was a book, Biblical Acts, and there's a story underlined by Józef, merciful Samaritan. So it's a proof that what he read in the Bible, he put it into practice.
On September 10th, 2023, the Ulma family was beatified. The solemn Mass was led by Cardinal Marcello Semeraro, who in his homily stated, Today, the Ulma family joins the noble and rich group of sons and daughters of the Polish nation, who in both ancient and contemporary times have been elevated to the glory of the altar as saints and blessed. The witness of their lives is an example and model to follow.
In spite of the execution of Ulma family, the people in Markowa were still helping Jews. For instance, the Drewniak family, the Bar family, Cwynar and Szylar families. Of course, all of them were afraid, but still they were helping Jews. And the result of it, 21 Jews survived. And we are talking about a small village of Markowa. So once we take into the consideration the whole country, the whole Poland, there were many people that from bigger or smaller villages and towns, Polish people who helped Jews. On the wall, there are approximately 1,000 names of people who helped Jews, and in this group there are 600 people who were granted the title, the righteous among the nations. The number covers the people only from this area, from Podkarpackie province. It's worth noting that Poles constitute the biggest number of people granted the title, so 25% of those who were granted the title, they are Polish people.
The list of known Poles, priests and nuns who helped the Jews is long, but still only scratches the surface, and we must remember the extreme conditions under which this help was provided. The testimony of Michael Kutz is the best proof of this.
In 29th of October 1941, the German commandant called Mr. Margulis, the president of the Judenrat, and told him that next morning, the 30th of October, all the Jews from Nieswiec should dress themselves in the newest clothing, bring all the passports, birth certificates and identifications, young and old, sick and not, and walk to the headquarters, to the central marketplace. So my column approached late in the afternoon in the Radziwiłł Park. We heard screamings, yelling. I walked with some members of my group towards the grave. I don't know what had happened. I must have got with a rifle over the head. And after a while, I don't know how long it happened to me. It could be 2 hours, could be 3 hours, I don't know. I opened up my eyes and I started to listen. I didn't hear no more shooting, no more grenades thrown. And it was in the later part of the day because it was getting a little bit darkish. It was very cold because snowflakes started to come down in the end of October. With all my might, my strength, I've thrown a few bodies and tap on each other, and I made like a platform. And I jumped on it. And I was naked, full of blood, and I looked around slowly and nobody there. I got out of the grave, then I oriented myself. If I run through the park and to the areas where I know, I will reach a convent a few miles away. I ran to the convent, came over. There was a gate, and there was a bell with a cord in front. I started to pull the bell, the cord, and Mother Superior looked through the little window. She looked at me, she opened right away the gate. She let me in, she saw me naked, she took out her robe, and she threw at me. Then she called in a couple nuns, brought in some clothing from the janitor. Naturally, it was big on me, but I was thankful to have it. And the Mother Superior asked me if I want to eat. I says, no, I can't eat, I just want to have a glass of milk, I'm thirsty. She gave it to me.
Michael Kuc was not the only one helped by the Benedictine sisters from Nieśwież, yet they're not recognized as righteous among the nations. They're not mentioned in other official documents either. Father Mieczysław Kubik, also from Nieśwież, was executed in nearby Baranowice for helping Jews. He too is absent from the list of the righteous. The memory of the Benedictine sisters has survived thanks to a little-known account from a survivor, but most have faded into the shadows of oblivion. There were thousands of such events throughout Poland.